Alright, Augie, it's a new year. And somehow your appearance is even more heinous. Your face looks like it has been set on fire and put out with an axe. You're actually not the first one to tell me that this week. Shut up, Augie. No one asked you for your opinion. Additionally, the neighbor trimmed his bushes, so now we lost 80% of our background filming set. However, we now have a state-of-the-art portable light by Godox, which we will review this episode. Huzzah! I told you to shut the fuck up, Augie. A cloudy overcast. A giant diffuser that produces natural lighting that is a friend to indie filmmakers. Mainly because it's free. And free is as desirable to economic failures as wine is to single women over 30. But enough about existentialism. What happens if the cloud moves? Enter the Godox ML80Bi, the state-of-the-art portable light. So, what do you get when you order one of these lights? You get a padded case, which is quite a nice case to be honest. However, I would prefer if the box would store the light already assembled. You get the usual USB-C cord. Furthermore, you get a proprietary zoom reflector, which is supposed to be a huge selling point on this light. You get a big 6500 mAh battery, which may not be enough for certain electric devices. That's what she said. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha. And then of course you have the light body and a little holder. The light body has a protection cover, which you're not supposed to have attached when switching it on. Also, for the ones who have brain deterioration due to regular AI use, you attach the battery like this. Slides in with a clickety-click. That's what she said. Ha 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 ha. Now in case you want to detach the protection cover, you press that lever switch on the side. The reflector gets attached with a twist. It's not a big reflector, but as usual it's not the size that matters, but where you twist and stick it. So how do you operate it? Basically you hold the M button pressed until you see the wheel image. Then you turn the wheel. Then you turn the wheel again to select if you want to adjust the Kelvin or the brightness. When on brightness, press the center button on the wheel. Then turn the wheel to adjust the brightness. As you can see, the brightness is already quite high at 1%. Moving up will adjust it gradually, so it's not abrupt. As for Kelvin adjustment, it goes up to 6500K, which is nerd talk for the cooler lighting tone. This particular button on the side is a battery indicator. Now in case you run out of juice, you can use a USB-C power pack. I got a 27,000 mAh battery at 140 watts. I also bought an extra USB-C cord that is capable of up to 240 watts. And for indoors, I have a USB-C charger capable of 100 watts. So let's get to the banal parts of the different features. You press on the M again while on, and it will lead you to a list which you can cycle through with the wheel. Bluetooth is first, which I don't use. Then comes anti-false touch, which has nothing to do with an HR harassment program. It just locks stuff. And then there's screen brightness. Fairly self-explanatory, but not sure if it actually affects battery power much. Then there's fan noise setting. On outdoor it's already relatively quiet. Let's just say when filming outdoors, it will be the least interrupting noise you will encounter on your mic. And then there's language and factory reset, as well as fixture info, which is actually quite useful, showing you the temperature. To get back to the main menu, just press M. Alright, let's look at the different gimmick modes, because gimmicks are a good selling point to suckers from a corporation perspective. Just press on the mode button and cycle through. First one is flash. What it will do is simulate the lighting of many paparazzi photographers taking pics. The next one is lightning. What it will do is simulate lightning in your environment. You can use it for Halloween or for some scary scenes. Wow! The next mode is cloudy. What that particular one does is count on the fact that the consumer doesn't realize that it's just regular lighting at a higher Kelvin. Okay, the time of this review release, there aren't too many reviews of the ML80Bi yet. Most reviewers don't go through the different modes in detail, and now I can see why, since it's kind of tedious. If you want to skip ahead past those gimmicks, go to minute 6:15. All I will say is that I like the fire effect the most and will find good use for it for future short films. Well, until we hit minute 6:15, I will point out that I'm a lens guy and not a lighting guy. I think lenses are more interesting than lights. Different lenses have different flavors of lens formula and rendering, different aperture designs and coatings. Lights are just bulbs with a power source behind them. And if it's a bicolor, it's either warm or cool, and if it's an RGB, it has more colors, but it's not as bright as the bicolor, and the reflector is often more responsible for the brightness than the watts. Now there are some intricate nerd details about color spectrum, but as with any nerd details, the audience simply won't give a shit. Tough luck, Poindexters. Although I will say this, you do often need lights. There's no way around that. Lighting is the best way to create certain moods and atmospheres, which is vital for storytelling. Furthermore, lack of lighting will gimp your lenses harder than a blue-haired obese woman tone policing an actual science lecture. Lack of light will draw the color right out of the image produced by lenses, so if you spend a lot of money on lenses, which I have, then you need a light. Okay, where are we now? We're still not at 6:15? Fuck! This is gonna take way too long. So it's just a light, so just 5 minutes tops. Yeah. Okay, this will be more editing than I thought. I might as well start talking now about the zoom reflector on it. On the Godox side, it's called an MLZ. What that zoom reflector does is narrow and widen it from 13 degrees to 30 degrees. The wider you go, the less raw light you have. In the real world, is it going to make a difference? Hard to say. Alright, so here we have a scenario where there's too much overexposure because of backlighting. You reduce the overexposure, but now your subject is completely silhouetted out. And you're not willing to change the angle because of whatever mental defect you have that is still undiagnosed. This scenario requires a light. You can now see things at 10%. It's a bit better, but still somewhat dark. Now we gradually increase it to 50%. This is actually much better. I should also mention that the reflector is at 30 degrees. We're now increasing it to 70%. It's not much brighter than 50%. However, once I put it at 100%, things now look like a summer's day. For the next test, I will remove the reflector and now point it at a more worn-out dummy. Augie, our male model. As you can see, up to 30% there isn't much of a difference, due to the high aperture at f1.4. There simply is just too much light to start out. At 50, 70, 100%, you start to see a small difference, but not enough to justify buying that light. However, it's about a reflector, so now I reattach it and zoom it at 30 degrees. Now you can see a clear difference, and 30% is now creating a noticeable shadow for the 3D look. Look at Augie's visage, the nerve of his grotesque cells stealing the nutrients reserved for more important organisms like plants and insects. At 50, 70, 100%, it's now very bright, actually too bright. And if you care about your model, you will stop shining light at this point to not damage the eyes. So let's do more tests with Augie. You can see that the higher you go with the Kelvin, the more brighter it actually gets. Now it's more a matter of which Kelvin would be more suited to match the ambient lighting. We will now continue at f4, the aperture that most filmmakers would use on a medium-short 62mm equivalent lens like this. Even at 10%, you can see clear shadows, and I would say 30% is already too bright with some overexposure showing. 50, 70, and 100% is now just academic. It's too bright without a diffuser at this point. Out of curiosity, let's look at f8. It also shows an interesting sample of what happens if the sun would go down. 30% seems to be the sweet spot for dramaticism, realism, and some other ism. If you go higher than that, you might as well have to explain where the light source in front of his face is coming from in the story. Obviously, in an actual scene, the actor doesn't look into the lens. So now we have a proper Rembrandt lighting. Say something dramatic, Augie. Court is adjourned. Terrible. Just terrible. We will try it one more time, but in a more cinematic way. Court is adjourned. Augie, you're not selling it. This is supposed to be a catharsis for your character, and you look like you're calling dibs on some french fries that got dropped at the food court floor. That is the best I can do. And that is the problem, you lopside-headed gargoyle-looking novelty gnome resembling bridge troll piece of shit. I do like this portable light, and I will probably buy a second one too. There's an ML150Bi with more power at 150 watts, but it's less flexible with cheap portable power options. And I think 95 watts will do just fine. Alright Augie, that concludes the review of the Godox ML80Bi. What have we learned, other than that the shadows tend to be your friend? Well, yesterday I stepped on an electric scale, and it told me to punch myself in the balls. Oh, excuse me, did the title of this video say The Daily Video Diary of a Fat Fuck? No, stay on topic. Then I got nothing. That is what it says on the size tag of your underwear. Exactly.